If you could remove the stigma around one thing, what would it be? Colostomy bags ostomies. Seriously, they're not what people think they are. You don't smell, you don't have to restrict your life when you have one. You can still carry out a very fantastic day-to-day life. And in my case, my life is a million times better because I had the surgery. For a lot of people it is a lifesaver, not a life sucker. Talking openly about sex, especially to amongst teenagers. I don't mean this in a pedophilia ephebophilia creeper sort of way, but in an education sort of way. Playing Cards Against Humanity has taught me that my friends don't know about smegma, dental dams, or women's suffrage. At least now they know what smegma is all about. Baldness. You have no control over when or how fast you start losing your hair, so why should you have to be ashamed of it? I'm in my late 20s and my hairline is starting to recede and the hair on the back of my head is thinning. Do I care at all? Number. It's just like age. You can't stop it, so you may as well embrace it. I can't even imagine what it's like for women. Eating the same breakfast 5 days in a row and no can care, but eat the same dinner 5 days in a row. Everyone in my family loses their mind. I never thought of it this way, but you are right. Also, in America at least, there is a strange and rigid set of rules for what is acceptable breakfast food. Physician-assisted suicide, and the idea that death is something to be avoided at all costs. It's awful the things people are subjected to at the end of their lives, just to eke out a few more weeks or months of life with no quality at all. But people should be able to die with dignity, on their own terms. Infertility. It's already such a struggle without feeling ashamed for feeling less like a woman man. Why don't you adopt is not the answer. Depression and other mental illnesses. If I told someone I was diabetic and had it under control with insulin, it would be a perfectly fine subject to discuss. But to say that I was diagnosed as dysthymic and am doing fine on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds causes extreme discomfort. I try to be as open as possible about my life in an effort to get more people talking. If people weren't afraid to say they have a problem and ask for help, how many lives could be saved? I think part of that is a lack of faith in mental medications. The general opinion on them is they work sometimes, and sometimes they makes things worse. People hear horror stories and believe they are just too inconsistent. Gaming. The amount of times people have told me it rots your brain is freaking ridiculous. They then proceed to watch 5 hours of TV a night after work. Unfounded stigma and hypocrisy. In my English class today, a girl did a speech and started off by telling us she had schizophrenia, and then proceeded to start yelling and crying and curled up fetal position. She then stood up and told us that she is no different than the person we have all known for years, but that all of that was just stigma. The rest of her speech was on the stigma of mental health issues. Incredibly powerful and emotional speech. Mental illness. Imagine you have to deal with your mind attacking you, betraying you and mocking you every day of your life. Now, imagine that not only you don't get sympathy from society, but also you get to take crap from people. I had a massive panic attack this morning and am now drugged up on anxiety meds. Told work I had the flu because I dang well can't tell them the truth. Seeking help for pedophilia. I agree, anyone who acts on the urge has committed one of worst crimes imaginable. But at least some of these people might seek help if they could safely say, I'm having these awful thoughts. I need support, medical assistance ASAP. Type 1 diabetes. No, I don't overeat, and no, I didn't eat a lot of sugar. I bet I work out harder than most people. My pancreas is a pussy ZZ. Using black to describe people like any other description, like red-haired or tall. It's a distinguishing appearance, and dang it, if I'm trying to point out an acquaintance to someone else, I don't want to stumble around the word by saying the tall guy. That one, with the curly hair and the red shirt. No, not the one with the tattoo. I mean the guy with the tan shoes and the blue jeans. He's wearing a green hat. See? There. That's him. Is it not easier to say the tall black man in the green hat and red shirt? Being cheap. Cheap stuff can be as good as their more expensive counterparts. Or a cheap date, as long as it's not tacky and both of you agree beforehand to do it, can be really fun. Picking your nose. Everyone does it anyway. Why get judgmental over it? On a serious note, seeing a therapist. Your life doesn't have to be a train wreck to go see a therapist. They are helpful to anyone for all sorts of things. In fact, the people in therapy often have their crap together much better than most, because they're getting help and actively improving themselves. Being introverted. I'm pretty sure people label me as being weird or depressed because of it. I hate things like small talk, and people will always say something stupid like, "You need to quiet down." Menstruation. Seems like a lot of people think it's dirty or gross, but it is natural. Do I like it? Number. Do I think I should be embarrassed about it? Heck no. I've been diagnosed with depression and anxiety, but somewhat recently I learned how the mental disorders in the DSM are decided upon. New disorders are added, and some taken out of the DSM every time a new edition comes out. They decide what constitutes as a disorder by having a vote. It's completely unscientific. I don't know what to think about being diagnosed with depression and anxiety now. I'm eager for psychology to go beyond its soft science roots and get into more hard science-based neuroscience. I will never know if I have a real disorder of the brain until my brain is scanned. I am kind of bitter against the field of psychology because of this. Psychology labels us as having disorders based on our symptoms, but it has yet to understand the causes of our condition on a deeper level, and that troubles me. If the causes of depression and anxiety were better understood, our treatment options would be more effective. Taking leftovers from restaurants. If my friend doesn't finish her meal, why can't I take it? I'm not cheap or crazy. I just have a thing against wasted food. Eating alone at restaurants. I love eating with people, but sometimes it's nice just having a quiet meal without having to make conversation. I just want to enjoy the food. ADHD. It exists, and it freaking sucks. I hate how every college student uses it to get a Daryl. Because of the stigma attached and the fact that I'm in my early 20s, I don't even talk about my diagnosis and illness because I've never once had a good response to it. I've taken Ritalin Concerta, I've taken Dexedrine, but right now the only medication managing my symptoms, albeit mildly, just enough where I can calm myself down, is Wellbutrin, a crappy antidepressant that I'm trying to get an okay to taper off of, because the side effects scare the crap out of me. ADHD isn't the lack of attention. It's not just zoning out and being lazy. It's the inability to concentrate and pull information into mind when you need it, if it's not whatever you're interested in at that time. The best visualization I can offer is the Harry Potter movie where the letters start flying around his house like crazy and he's grabbing into the air for them. Those letters are thoughts that I'm supposed to be tapping into and remembering knowledge from. But the difference is sometimes I never catch it. The more I try to get off whatever's on my mind, the more I space out and feel like I'm not thinking anything at all. No doctor takes me seriously in the new city I moved to because of the stigma. I've been told ADHD is just a personality trait. If a personality trait makes you unable to function in a way that sustains a suitable way of life, is it not an illness? I guess bipolar is a personality trait then. I've heard I tell every doctor I see that I want to be able to manage my symptoms if possible without medication. Learn to work around them like someone in anger management does with rage. And so far the only thing I've found that works is calm exercise, like a walk through the park. Unfortunately it's -30 and under where I live, and gym equipment doesn't yield the same result. I've also noticed I work a lot easier at night, but I work a 9-5 desk job that obviously doesn't accommodate that. What I want people to understand is that comparing ADHD to being lazy is not accurate at all. This entire post looks like I'm binging on stimulants, but you're just seeing my thought process at work. For lack of a better phrase, hyperfocus, which is almost a short-term addiction to accomplishing something. I just can't control what that something is or when I do it, like 3 AM right now. Hopefully some people can use this insight to question their thoughts and opinions on ADHD and those who haven't claimed to have it. I don't want to be like this, and I really hate not being able to be open about it on top of everything. Breastfeeding. I'm a dude and could care less. I hear it's way healthier for the baby too. Why anyone cares if there's a boob out in the room with a baby attached to it? I'll never know. A baby's gotta eat. P.S. I really could care less about this. It's possible I could if I wanted to. It's what boobs were made for in the first place. It's just people have sexualized boobs so much. Introversion. It really bugs me to be called antisocial. No, I'm not ignoring you. No, I'm not shy. I just really can't handle being around a lot of people for a long period of time. I'm happy enough being on my own. So please stop trying to drag me out every night. Also, feminism. I'm not a radical. I don't want to shove my opinions in your face. Most of us just want to have equal footing for everyone, but it's those few bad apples that cause the stigmatism. Pit bulls. It kills me how many die in shelters just because people think they are all vicious dogs. It all depends on the type of person that is training them. No dog is born evil. I'm surprised couple of people mentioned mental illness, but not genetic one. People, egg with Down syndrome, need love and acceptance like everyone else. They shouldn't being looked at like freaks. Not only it is not their fault, they can't even treat that. Makeup. Some people view it as hiding their true selves, tricking people to have sex with them or shallowness, but it's nothing like that. It's fun to paint your face and change up your look from time to time, and it's a great confidence boost. I also wish men could wear makeup without being viewed as F or unsure about their gender. Likewise, it's awful when people make assumptions about women who don't choose to wear it. I agree. People should do what they like with their own faces. Breastfeeding in public. If boobs weren't so sexualized in our culture today, you wouldn't even think twice about my infant child having lunch and how it offends you. Fan fiction. Most of it is crap, but every now and then you find something good that really lifts your spirits. Fan fiction, as a concept, is a great thing. It allows readers and writers to take worlds and stories they love and add their own little twists to it. It's creative, unique, and lets us all learn about each other's dreams. Well, ideally. Men wearing clothes that are traditionally worn by women. If a woman wears a tie or a blazer, no one cares. But if a man wears a dress or a skirt, he's a transvestite or crossdresser and it's some kind of big thing. How about people just wear what they want? Challenging people. Sometimes I want to know more about you and your beliefs, and I am gonna ask some questions. I use your answers to learn how to treat you better. I understand this one all too well. I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to just outright talk about myself, but really doesn't mind playing 20 questions about my life or about myself. People learn something and they're like, I didn't know you were into that, and all I can think of is you never asked. Definitely mental illness, especially the stigma that the mentally ill have. So many are undiagnosed because they have their own beliefs about being mentally ill. Took me forever to come to grips with the fact that I'm bipolar. Being poor. Nothing like a little social Darwinism to make you feel like it's your own fault you make less than $30K per year. Not having children. Not everyone wants to be a parent. Not everyone has the personality and patience. Not everyone can afford to give a child a comfortable and stable life. Not everyone enjoys having children around. Not everyone is willing to make all those sacrifices. We as a society have been spoon-fed the idea that it's imperative to have children, that raising a family is the only right or reasonable choice in life, and it's not. And although producing children is something anyone with functional reproductive organs can do, raising them is not. Being female and doing whatever the frick I want with my body, and also my bra straps showing. God forbid anyone find out I wear a bra. Sex, sure it's a basic, ancient thing, but look at all the stigma around it. You can't show the naked human form on US television, but you can show people being murdered violently. Let's talk about sex, baby. Mental illness. It's okay to be emotionally unstable. It's okay to ask for help. We need to stop labeling everyone with depression or bipolar disorder or eating disorders etc. as crazy. It's not their choice to be the way they are. They're sick the same way that someone who has cancer is sick. If you come out and tell people you have cancer, you instantly get sympathy and emotional support. If you come out and tell people you're depressed, everyone starts avoiding you. This needs to stop. Women who give their children up for adoption. This is a tremendously difficult thing for women to do, yet usually they do this to make sure the child has a better life. Somehow, society sees this as abandonment. This is bad for both mother and child. If the decision were lauded, more teenagers would choose adoption rather than keep a child to be raised in poverty. As a high school teacher, I see too many teenage mothers make the choice to keep a child when they have no way to raise it. In my part of the world, they have little access to abortion or birth control, so they are stuck because they are ashamed to say they gave up their child for adoption. Weightlifting. People are afraid they will get too big buff and so they avoid weightlifting. Women are especially afraid that they will become too muscular or manly. Gaining muscle isn't something that accidentally or magically happens. It takes discipline, consistency, and dedication. With proper training, you can lift weights at your own pace to achieve and maintain a healthy physique that you can be proud of. I promise you that you will not accidentally turn into Schwarzenegger China, but you can certainly make it your goal if that's what you're trying for. You don't randomly walk into a uni and accidentally end up with a degree in theoretical physics. Marijuana. I am a responsible citizen, voracious reader, athlete, and an A student, but there are people who would condemn me as a failure and a washout if I told them I smoke weed. Exactly. I manage a job and a 4.0 GPA, living on my own. My family is super proud of everything I've accomplished, but if they found out I had smoked even once, all of that would crumble. It's amazing what damage the war on drugs has done to actual knowledge. Having a foreskin. Seriously, everyone in America is ignorant about its functions, and for that matter why everyone on Earth is born with a prepuce, aka foreskin, in the first place. Girls have one too, to protect their gland's clitoris in the same way the male's gland's penis was meant to be protected. Everyone I seem to meet in my country or online has been indoctrinated into believing that this one part of your body just isn't supposed to be there for some reason, and they spew all this propaganda at you to rationalize cutting it off of children. It makes them cleaner. It makes washing easier. It gives them a protective barrier against all STDs and HIV. It'll prevent all premature ejaculation. The opposite sex will find them more attractive, etc. If only these ignorant folks knew the ignorant parents who circumcise their daughters claim the same thing. I just really cannot wait for the day when I no longer have to live in a world where it is okay to cut off a body part belonging to someone else before they have given consent, in the absence of any medical necessity. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.